The Malaysian nation-building effort started in post-colonial era. It's definitely not an easy path of bringing together the diverse culture and the plural society. In the final part of Agendakini's exclusive interview with Dr. Farish Noor, we ask him to cite examples of other countries that have been successful in their nation-building exercises. Countries that started similarly as Malaysia during the post-colonial era and which have overcome the various hurdles of nation-building through strong political leadership.
Well, every country is specific and unique according to its historical circumstances. Of course, Malaysia is a unique country because of its ethnic and religious composition, making it one of the most complex countries to govern in the world. But there are two countries, I think, that have gone through periods of great difficulty and have come out very well. One is South Africa and the other is Indonesia. South Africa, after the fall of apartheid, has actually transformed itself into a multiracial democracy where, contrary to what a lot of people thought, there has not been a politics of vengeance. Remember, in the 90s there was this fear, particularly in the West, that as soon as apartheid came to an end, there would be mass killings, victimization of white South Africans. That has not happened. And even when you look at the Truth Commission in South Africa, the attempt to reconcile all South Africans together, this is a country that was on the brink of crisis. It could have gone two ways: either complete chaos and bloodshed, or to be brave enough to start from a new beginning. And it chose the brave option. It chose to forgive, and it chose to speak honestly and truthfully to itself. So the Truth Commission, all these attempts to uncover who were responsible for the atrocities and the crimes of the past, all of this has happened. And I think South Africa today remains as a model in the eyes of many African states, and I think many developing countries as well, of how a post-crisis country can actually put itself back together again. I'm struck, because I've been to South Africa several times, I'm struck by how the strong sentiment of a common humanity prevails in this country. And a country that has been, so mired in racism for 300 years can actually transcend that by looking up to a higher moral register and trying to build a good, morally good South Africa where all citizens have equal rights, and foregoing the politics of vengeance. So South Africa is one model for me. Another model which I look up to very much is, of course, Indonesia, that had to live through the longest dictatorship, military dictatorship, during the time of Suharto. And yet if you look at Indonesia today, this country that was so run down by the international media, this is a country that's had several successful democratic elections. I've just come back from the last one, parliamentary elections in Indonesia. And it has a vibrant democratic culture. It has, I think, the freest press in all of Southeast Asia and the most critical press. And as an academic who teaches in two Indonesian universities, I'm struck by the amazing strides that have been made in the field of education. First of all, democratizing education. Indonesia now has free schools for children, for poor children. Opening up the educational space. There's a very high representation of female students in all the universities, which means this is a great leap for Indonesian women. And then if you look at the content of education, in terms of the way in which politics is taught, history is taught, religion is taught, Indonesia has managed to demonstrate that you can go through 30 years of military dictatorship and still struggle to build a vibrant democracy. In many respects, Indonesia is ahead of many other countries of Southeast Asia, particularly in freedom of press and the accountability of the institutions of power. I'm very happy to see corrupt politicians being taken to court in Indonesia. I wish that would happen more often in some other countries as well. So in that respect, yes, I do see other countries succeeding. Of course, Malaysia means this is a Malaysian problem. It's something Malaysians made, and we have to solve our own problem, and we have to look for our own solutions. But the fact that you have countries like South Africa and Indonesia would suggest that these are not impossible tasks, and they can be done. But it will require maturity and responsibility on the part of our political leadership, and not people who go around playing with racial or ethnic sentiments, or politicians who play with Chris's on the stage whenever it suits their interests. I mean, that sort of irresponsible, dangerous politics is the thing that will retard the development of Malaysia as a nation state and do, I think, a lot of damage to both, inter-ethnic and inter-religious relations in Malaysia in the long run. Well, I think what we see as a constant factor is the sectarianism in our politics. I think sectarian politics is still the norm. So whether it's ethnic-based politics or religious-based politics or both, that has been the norm, because we've not been able to think outside this tribal mindset. We are living as tribes in a shared nation. So Malaysia is a contested territory. There is not only the geographical space, but even the discursive space, the public domain, the press, the media is being contested. And it's being contested by people who think in tribal terms. My tribe against your tribe, my faith against your faith, my religion against your religion. And that's why so much of what passes as political debate in Malaysia is infantile and juvenile and frankly irrational. I'm struck by how people can actually organize demonstrations in Malaysia for issues which even next door in Indonesia are so trivial that it's not worth 5 minutes of your attention. And yet here we are prepared to fight and accuse each other and attack each other and condemn each other over what are basically very primordial issues. So something that strikes me is that this sense of primordial attachment to race, to religion, is getting stronger and stronger in Malaysia. And again, this is because of the unscrupulous manipulation of certain politicians who play to the gallery. And that's why I have a deep suspicion of politics in general and politicians in particular, because I've yet to see any real Malaysian-minded politicians. I think now, deep inside, some of these politicians are perhaps rather intelligent, perhaps even above average, and they should know that, this is actually dangerous. They should know, and I think they do know that this is dangerous. But yet they always fall back on the convenient, quick solution, to organize a demonstration, to organize a rally, to organize a conference or a talk. They fall back on these primordial sentiments. Now that might serve your short-term interests. It might get you elected at the next by-election, but you are not thinking of Malaysia as a whole, and that's where their irresponsibility lies. So on the one hand, you have the sectarian culture, which I think is becoming strong, dangerously strong. But on the other hand, as someone who observes popular culture, I'm also seeing the opposite happening. I mean, there are so many new urban constituencies popping up all over the place. Constituencies that we never expected, urban-based, youth groups, whether they are mud-rumpit gangs or whether they are, the new gender groupings that we are emerging. For the first time, each and everyone looking for a voice and a political vocabulary of their own. Even when you look at the mud-rumpit phenomenon, for instance, the mud-rumpits are interesting because in a way these are urban working-class youth who are claiming the streets as their territory. They are poor boys, they are poor kids who are actually claiming the roads as theirs. So there is a contestation of urban space taking place there. I'm struck by the new groups that I'm meeting. Some of them are even underground. I've actually met and I've been in internet communication with a number of young gay ulama, for instance, who years ago would never have come out, but they do it in private with me and talk about their problems. But clearly people are beginning to voice their anxieties and worries and concerns, and I think Malaysians of all groups are beginning to claim that space. What we've not had, because we've not had a real democracy, you see, we've not had a real democracy for almost 3 decades. What we've not had is a democratic culture of public negotiation of public space. And so whenever there's an issue, people go and they claim, they plant their flag on that domain and they don't allow anyone else to speak. Now, we need to at least agree on the terms of engagement so that if I say something you disagree with, you don't, accuse me of attacking your race or your religion. You learn to deal with my argument in the same way that I have to learn to deal with your argument. So a basic fundamental public democratic space has to be created with a common democratic culture. Now that's not happened because we've not had democracy for 3 decades. But I think now's the time, especially with the younger generation who are more savvy with communicative skills. I think now's the time when we can actually start doing this. And that's why for me, I still place my hope in the internet, in the alternative media, because that's where we're going to have these new debates emerging.